Welcome back to another episode of the Honest Conversations with CJ Finley and Erin Finley.
Hello.
Happy Valentine's Day to those that are celebrating today, sending all the love and good vibes your way. If you have not watched one of our episodes before, please watch one of our previous episodes. We love to add you and connect you into our conversations and love to hear what you guys think we should be talking about in terms of our relationship and maybe some value we can provide you in yours. But before we get into it, what are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about stress and how stress can be good and also really bad for us, and how to be mindful about the amount of stress that you have in your life and how it can kind of manifest and show up without you really knowing, and how that compounds over time if you're not careful.
Yeah, stress is one of those things that's really been a positive and negative impact in both Erin and my life. And I'd love to kick it off with just what has been one of the most stressful things that has happened in your life?
So I think when I think about this topic, what I think about most, and especially lately, has been really close to me right now, is the other day was my father's, it would have been his 60th birthday, and he passed away, I think it was 7 years ago now, from a heart attack. And so when I think about stress, I mean, obviously that tragedy brought a lot of stress into my life at that time, but why I'm so passionate about this message right now is because I think back to what his life was like, and on the outside, he was doing everything right for a healthy lifestyle, but I think as I reflect on it now, those behaviors were not maybe necessarily the healthiest and could have contributed to an unnecessary amount of stress that led to his unfortunate death. And I think we often think, okay, these outlets such as exercise, such as, you know, pushing ourselves to achieve more, are positive things for our life, but there is a point at which they can manifest in stress. And I think that that's important for us all to recognize when it hits that threshold, so that we can really maintain a balance of, you know, relaxation, recovery, so that you can be at peace in your life without causing more harm than necessary. So when I think about my dad's life, I often inherited a lot of his behaviors and tendencies. And so my own life, I know, first of all, that I have a genetic predisposition to heart disease. So early onset, you know, heart attacks is possible in my life. So how I'm combating that is with, you know, mindful diet and exercise. And exercise is a big stress relief for me, but it can also be something that I have to be careful I don't take to the extreme. So we'll talk a little bit about that in this episode, but we have a couple of questions lined up to really hone in on this message and how you can think about stress in your life and what you can do to manage it.
Yeah, and before we kick those questions off, I just want to clarify that there is good stress and bad stress. And you can Google it and get the scientific definition, but in my life and in our life, we like to kind of define it as like the stress that's really pushing you to become a better human being, but not allowing yourself to go too far into that and have depreciating assets. So what that would look like would be if you're working out 7 days a week, 2 hours a day, and that's really taking you away from your relationships with your significant other, or eating healthier, or just spending time doing the things that you love with the people that you love, that's going to have a negative impact on your life and overall create stress that isn't going to help your life become better. So
I would agree. And I think if you think about your work life maybe too, there's a good amount of stress if you're, you know, trying to meet certain deadlines, you're trying to do a good job, and that creates a little bit of stress. That means you care. And I think sometimes stress can really push us to our potential. But if that's nonstop and you find that you're losing sleep and you're just not able to maintain a healthy balance of other things that bring you joy in life, that's when it can be, you know, not so good.
Yeah, one of the things that I tell myself is, how do I increase my stress tolerance while reducing stress that is just not needed? So you mentioned work, where there's a lot of times we're stressing over things because we think they're urgent, but they're not really urgent. But there's also the path of you do have time to work out and to do some of the things that we always justify in our head that we might not have time to do, and we stress ourselves out, when in reality it's like, how do you increase your stress tolerance? By adding things like meditation, going for a walk, just a lot of mindfulness stuff that you can increase the amount of things that you can get done without having that kind of mental fog of stress.
Yeah.
But let's get into it. So the first question we have is, what are 3 stressors that you deal with on a daily basis?
I'm gonna let you answer that one.
Oh, I'm going first? Okay, so for me, I mean, there's a lot of stressors that go on in everyday life, but I think the top ones for me are definitely, especially in the world of entrepreneurship, like when you have 50 different ways you can go, it's a hard choice each and every day of like which path you go down. So I don't really have a left or right choice where it's every day I wake up and I have the same type of 9 to 5 routine. It's every day I have to wake up and kind of decide what is the most important thing today. So a big stressor in my life is when I wake up trying to navigate choosing what is the most important thing I need to get done. Now that leads into kind of like the second stressor of my life is, I think a lot of people can relate to this. Once you do choose that path, thinking in your head, oh, should I keep going down this path or is this the wrong one? And one of the things I'm always fighting is just stay true to myself and stay true to my gut and my core values. And that keeps me steadfast on that path. But I would be lying if I said that every time I make a decision, I'm just like, yeah, 100% in on it. A lot of the times it's me gutting through it and proving to myself that this was the right decision to make. And then I think the third one would have to be, let's see, daily stressors in my life.
Health,
This is less of one nowadays because I have been taking control of it, but over the past probably 5 years since we've been together, my health has been a huge stressor, not just for me, but also for Erin. I've had to change jobs, change career paths, change where we live, ultimately because of my health, some of the health conditions that I have. And the cool thing is now that I've actually been focusing on it more, so this is a good sign of like, maybe that stress was needed because it was so stressful that it made me realize how important it was in my life. And then as soon as I started focusing on it now I have less stress in that area and everything else seems to be falling in line.
And it's interesting that you say that because like both of us had stomach issues. I mean, his were a little bit worse in comparison, and I always thought I had severe issues. I did back in the day. I've fortunately worked through them. But we talked about how in prior conversations we've talked about how we thought stress was the cause of a lot of those issues. And I think it's just this vicious cycle where maybe stress is the cause of those issues, but then once you have the issues, that causes more stress. And so if you're able to solve, maybe the stress, maybe your issues are less inflamed and worse and whatever. And then it's just this cycle that you can improve by thinking about stress as kind of the root cause of it all. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so instead of like, I think the problem I always had was you go to the doctor and you're like, oh, are you stressed? And especially in American culture, a lot of people are just like, nah, like it's typical to have stress. And it's just like, well, what type of stress? They never really asked me like my day to day and what did that look like and how was I feeling in every moment and how did, like it literally stressed me out to eat or to not eat at certain times and to not have the food that I loved because the food that I loved made me feel good versus having to go to a restaurant where I was like stressed out and
I guess this is
make me sick.
This isn't one of our formal questions, but how do you recognize when you're stressed?
I mean, I think that's half the problem in itself is, especially like I'm a competitive athlete. So a lot of it is pushing yourself through stressful barriers. And you, as a kid, I would just tough it out like all the time. But that made me lose kind of like, I became numb to the stress in my body and feeling myself. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that I've leaned into is, not to get TMI, but like if your digestion is messed up, like that's a sign. If your sleep is messed up, that's a sign. If you're irritable, that's a sign. So it's just like looking at kind of how you're showing up in the world. And if you're having issues in those areas, like if you can't sleep through the night, something's up. If you can't seem to focus at what you're doing, whether it's your job or in school, something's wrong.
If you're really reactive.
Yeah, if you are reactive, so it's less of like, at first I wasn't noticing it within myself. It was more so, how was I showing up in the world? And for me, I mean, honestly, one of the times I was like losing weight. So it was like, wow, when someone asked me and my face was sunken in, are you okay? That was a huge sign that like, wow, maybe I'm like overly stressed. Something is wrong here. And then I start digging in, because it's not easy.
Yeah.
All right, next question, and you're answering this one.
All right.
What are your thoughts on tracking your goals, exercises, food intake, and how that may contribute to stress?
I like this question because we are both very goal-oriented people, but I'm really passionate about knowing when that can lead to unhealthy behavior. So it's important to have a direction. Like, no one goes to you're not driving a car to some place you've never been to before and you're just like, I'm just gonna see how I'm gonna get there. Like, you need to put the destination in Google Maps and find your path. I think same scenario, you need to do the same thing with your life. So if you have a certain destination or outcome that you wanna achieve, you need to figure out what path you're gonna take to get there. But I think that it's really important that you're not super rigid about the steps you take to get there. And I think that this has a lot to do with what the goal is around and who you are as a person, and having the self-awareness to know the type of structure that you need. So I think, I don't have much experience working one-on-one with clients, but I can probably say that there are certain people that would need a lot more structure than others. And I think what happens when you set so much structure, and I'm talking like, say you have a fitness goal and you want to work out, set a workout plan for yourself, and you make it so that this day you do this day you do this, and whatever, you have to follow the plan. I've tried that before, and with my lifestyle, it can lead to more stress, because if something comes up in your life, you have to take care of this personal thing, or you have this meeting that pops up and you can't hit that, then it's like you go into this whole spiral of, oh my goodness, now I'm all set back and now I have to make up for it somehow. And so I found that for me, tracking goals, and whether it's a personal goal, a physical goal, whatever it is, it's much better for me to set kind of like a loose structure where I just need to take these 5 steps for over this many weeks, and I know that doing that is going to get me closer to it. I'm not going to set a specific time or date or whatever, or number of whatever it is, because I think that can cause more stress when we feel like it's kind of manipulating our behavior and not allowing us to be fully present for the things that we need to be in life.
I like all that, and I think something for me that could help anybody listening is, I made up this rule called the 4x7 rule, and there's 7 days in a week. Luckily, there's an odd number of days in the week. So what I try to do is just win 4 out of the 7 days, because if you win 4 days out of 7, exponentially that number is going to be more good days than bad days over your life. And I think a lot of people go into their days and they really don't have a long-term view of everything. So if they have a bad day that day, it can compound into another day and another day, rather than realizing, like, give yourself 3 bad days out of the week. Because even if you have 3 bad days and you have 4 good ones, like, exponentially you're setting yourself up for success in the long run. So one of the things that I've tried to do over the years is just go easier on myself on the bad days and then ride the good waves. Because every time there's a good wave, like if you're a surfer, you're gonna have to wait another half an hour or 2 hours for that next good wave. And that's just how life goes. So if you can enjoy the little moments and go easier on yourself, and I think going easier on yourself, much like with this YouTube channel, is just focusing on the process, less about the outcome, more about the process. So for me, I'm obsessed with like just finding one area to get better in. So today, that area is like, we're messing with some different lighting. We're gonna see what this looks like when we're done. And then we're gonna iterate on top of that. And the next video, we're gonna try something else to get a little bit better. Rather than being like, this is the video that needs to get 100,000 views and we need to do this by this date. It's more so, how do we get a little bit better each and every time, rather than focusing on that outcome. And not focusing on the outcome and focusing on the process has helped me reduce the stress so much. And it's also, I think, brought out the kid in me more. And I think the more you bring out the kid, the more fun you have, and the more fun you have, the better you actually do. Because when you're a little kid, you're not focused on the goals. You're just focused on the here and the now of like, man, this is really fun. I like doing this. So,
and one of my questions as a follow-up to that is, if you're trying to, push yourself for growth, and you can, hit this next level in your career or in your whatever part of your life, how do you know when you should push yourself versus when you should kind of dial it back and, just say you're doing fine, you can take a little break? Like, what, for the people that are like A-type go-getters, how do you draw that line between like, I'm gonna keep going, I'm gonna keep going because I need to keep taking action, I need to keep moving forward? I think there's this like fine balance that I know I personally have been trying to find between like knowing when I've done enough and it is what it is, and I can just kind of try a little bit more the next time.
I think the answer is, as with a lot of things, is it depends. Like, it depends on like, what is your life's mission? Because if your life's mission is to, let's bring up Elon Musk, go to Mars. Like, he's gonna be working a lot more hours than I would be because this guy wants to go to Mars. So it's like, if your life's mission, if you're willing to die for your life's mission and just like do whatever it takes to get there, as long as you are intentional with that and you know that's your mission and you're not doing it against your own will, I think where people get in trouble is if they're working 80 hours a week for the job they don't love and it's creating that type of stress, rather than like the good stress of like, man, if you found what you love to do and you like going on 3 or 4 hours of sleep and you can operate and you're like, cool, I don't care if I die at 40 because like, whatever, this is my path. That's on you. That's your choice. And for me, it's kind of been, we look at longevity. Like, I think, like, how can I impact the world, but also get to see my grandkids, future grandkids, impact the world as well? Like, I think like that, and that's me. So for you, you have to decide, like, maybe you don't even want to get married. Maybe you don't want kids. Maybe, like, there's so many factors that go into it. But what you need to really look at, and this is what I've looked at in myself, is what is for me, not for everyone else around me, and taking away the opinions of everyone around me and saying, you know what, like, a good one is sleep. We're sleeping a lot more this year. We got the Whoop, and I got the Oura Ring as well. And I'm comparing data and just looking at how sleep makes me feel and show up on this world. And I've realized that I need a lot more sleep than I thought I did. And you know what? Like, my health is getting better, our relationship is getting better, and some of the things that I like in my life are just ultimately more fulfilling just because I'm sleeping an extra hour per day.
I would also say, like, in my life, so fitness is a big part of it, and I used to have the mindset of like, okay, I want to be a faster runner, I want to be, stronger, whatever. So I need to push myself hard all the time. And what that looked like was pretty intense. And I've just come to the realization that, like, I'm not going to the Olympics. Like, I'm not trying to like break some world record.
I think it comes with, if you really wanted to, you could try.
Yeah, but I'm also,
it's not for you.
It's not for me. And I realized that there are other areas of my life that I also want to, work really hard at with my career and the things that we want to achieve together. So, going super hard down this one path just doesn't make sense. Like, there's a
and that
balance.
brings up a great point, because I think, like, especially if we're talking exercise, like, I notice this a lot. People try to crush themselves in the gym, like, every time they walk in there. And then what happens is, like, if you're trying to crush yourself in the gym and then you get injured and then you have 3 or 4 months off because you got injured and you're rehabilitating, like, you just set yourself back, like, so far, rather than, you know what, like, I'm gonna go hard one day a week when I'm like, I feel fully recovered and I know myself. But the other days, like, I'm just gonna be very balanced, and I'm gonna go get my sweat on, and then I'm gonna go stretch, and then I'm gonna go eat a nice meal, and I'm gonna sleep well. And that's gonna set myself up for success in the future by what I'm doing today. And I think that's a huge thing, is tomorrow's stress was really created today. I think for a lot of people, is like the decisions they made today created tomorrow's stress, versus we're very conscious of what can I do today to reduce my stress of tomorrow.
Speaking of that, next question, what does stress reduction look like for you in your fitness life? Because you do push really hard with your athletics, and then in your business life, since you've started your business and you're trying to scale it.
Stress reduction for me in fitness and in health and wellness, and then business. Let's start with business, because honestly, that's an easier question for me to start with. Business stress reduction looks like only working with people that don't cause me stress. Like literally at the end of the day, I will refuse projects.
What does that look like?
That looks like, because I've gone through some projects before where other people and environments cause stress for me, meaning like
lack of clarity
of job roles, lack of clarity of what the outcomes we're striving for, not understanding like what's the outcome even gonna be. Like for me, what it looked like is I like to have a purpose behind everything, a why. And if the why isn't clear, then it stresses me out. And I can handle stress. Like I'm still in an environment, like the startup world is naturally stressful, but I'm around people that kind of embrace the stress and then also can talk through and communicate right now. And I think that's another thing, is like communication. Lack of communication was stressful for me, and not in the communication of like, I think a lot of people overly communicate. They're always texting, and like it's just so much going on, rather than just like, hey, set a meeting once a week and this is when we're going to talk, and be very structured in the process, and realizing that this is a long-term thing. So in business, it's really working with people that are long-term minded and have a long-term vision, and aren't so reactive to the everyday stressors going on. Because if they're reacting to the everyday stressors, I'm going to react to the everyday stressors, and I don't like that.
But how do you, I guess what I was really getting to was, how do you give yourself a break and kind of...
Oh, okay. So I've set limits this year, where it's like the amount of meetings I take, I'm limiting, after hours work. I have taken on some things recently that are at nighttime, but those are things that are filling my cup. And then what I do during the day is I adjust my day so that I can protect the nighttime. I used to like wake up at 6 and then try to go till 9 p.m. at night, versus now, like if I'm teaching teens at night from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., I'm taking a break in the middle of the day so that I can like get some clarity and get some me time before I go into that. Because what used to happen was I wouldn't take that time because I'd feel guilty, and then basically get to 8 p.m. and stress myself out. But in terms of health and wellness, really diving into the recovery side of things. That's how I'm going about. I've always been pretty good. You've watched me, like I've been pretty good at not really overdoing it when I work out. And that comes from just, I've been an athlete, so recovery has always been a thing. Like you'd play a game, and then the next 2 days, like we wouldn't really practice as hard, and we'd be taking care of our bodies and doing ice baths. But I think now the thing that I'm doing better than ever before is realizing what true recovery is. It's not just physical, it's mental. So like really checking myself, how much energy am I spending thinking and doing and ideating, rather than just like, can I just sit here and just like not think and just like meditate and read and write and be like, put a candle on and some incense and like just relax. Like I have never been able to relax in my entire life until I think the past year.
For me, yeah, I would say in the fitness side of things, we were just talking about this, like every time I would go for a run, I would try to beat like my fastest pace. And I would think that if I didn't, like what happened? What's wrong with me? Why am I not able to push myself? And that's the most ignorant thing you could ever imagine, to not factor in all the little things that affect your performance. And so for me now, it's like I run because I enjoy it, and I do hope to get faster and a stronger athlete all around, but that looks like showing up every day when I have the time and doing what feels right in that moment. So if it's, doing a strength workout because I don't feel like I have enough energy, or I haven't slept enough, or I haven't fueled myself well enough during the day to do, an intense run, then I don't do that. So it's really being mindful of everything that goes into performance, and recovery is super important, and something that we're both really taking a really hard look at lately. And thankfully this is becoming more mainstream in the market, and there's a lot more out there, a lot more knowledge around how to recover both physically and mentally. Not everyone is as into fitness as we are, but we can all probably relate to needing recovery from the amount of stress we put on ourselves with our jobs, with our family lives, with all the things that we think are so important throughout the day. And recovery is just remembering, I think a huge part of it is remembering, having the gratitude every day that these are nice, worries to have, and just, it's gonna be okay. Like, you're gonna get through it. Like, a lot of the stressors that we think are stressors probably aren't in the grand scheme of things. And I always like to think back to like fight or flight response, and like, if you go back to our ancestors, like they were stressed about getting food, and there are people out there stressed about getting food. So like, really take a good look at your own life and what you think is maybe causing you stress, and it helps to write it down and kind of have, look at it from a third person perspective and think, is this something I need to be stressed about? And what can I do to alleviate it from the list of things that are causing me anxiety?
I love that. And I wish we can continue to riff on that, but we got like 2.5 minutes before this camera turns off. So let's get into our last question, kind of rapid fire. If someone watching this is stressed right now, what are some actionable tips you'd tell them to try for short-term stress reduction?
I feel like I just said mine. So I would say like really focus on gratitude. And I think immediately doing that helps me a lot with perspective over the things that I feel stressed about. So if it's something with work or personal life that's bringing me a lot of stress, I just take a second to think about like how I can turn those situations into good. And one mindset tip that I'm very passionate about is turning I have to into I get to, and just viewing everything as an opportunity. There's no doubt that certain things can be stressful, traumatic events and unexpected circumstances can cause a lot of stress on our lives, but think about possibly what good those circumstances can lead to if you use it as a lesson or as a growing experience. So I always say gratitude. How about you?
I would say a couple things. First thing is write it out. So if it stays in your brain, it has less of a chance to really get solved. And this is for anything out there, even your job, your exercises, anything that you're thinking about. The minute you put pen to paper and get it outside of your head, you're gonna gain clarity on, is this stressor even a stressor? Or is it something that it just was a thought that came into my head and I'm letting it overtake me? So as soon as you put it on paper, you're kind of gonna see like, why the heck am I stressed about this? The second thing is viewing the voice in your head as your best friend or your worst friend. So like, if you view the voice in your head that's stressing you out, and you take that voice out of your body, and that person is stressing you out, you're probably gonna walk away from that person. So that's why, again, putting that on paper and viewing that as a person, you're just gonna walk away from that stress. And then it also gives you, as Erin was saying, the ability to kind of see how that stress compares to other people in this world. And like, really at the end of the day, if you have shelter and food and people around you that care about you, you have everything that you need at the end of the day. And the last thing I would say is just movement. So it doesn't have to be any type of hardcore exercise or anything, but if you get out in the sun and you go for a walk and you get some fresh air, you're gonna feel better. So anytime that you have a stress or some type of stress, realize what type of habits naturally kind of cure us as human beings, and that's sunlight, walk, fresh air, conversation with friends. Yeah. Get into an environment as quickly as possible that you know is going to reduce some of your stress, and you know what those environments are better than anybody else. But fortunately, we got to wrap up.
That's all for today.
Yeah, I really want to get into this conversation again. I think this is going to be something we'll talk about.
Yeah, we can do a lot of like branched conversations off of this one.
But appreciate you guys listening. This is
Have a great week.
And Erin Finley with the Honest Conversations. Talk to you guys soon. Thrive on.